I'm Frank, 67 years old, from Coventry, and I want to tell you something that nobody told me before I came to the Philippines. Nobody told me I was going to become a grandfather. Not a real grandfather. I've got no grandchildren back in England. My son Jamie hasn't got there yet. But here in Dumaguete, on a street in the Philippines that I couldn't have found on a map 2 years ago, there's a boy called Junior who is 7 years old and who calls me Lolo Frank. Lolo means grandfather. And every morning when I come out of my flat, Junior is at the gate waiting, and he says Lolo Frank, and that is currently the best part of my day. I didn't come here for that. I came here because the numbers worked, and Coventry in February is Coventry in February, and after 31 years working for the Highways Department, I had a pension and time and not much else, and I thought, let's have a look at this Philippines everyone keeps going on about. That was 2 years ago. I'm not going back. 31 years with Coventry City Council. Highways Department, not glamorous. Not the kind of job that gets you on the news unless something's gone wrong. I managed road maintenance contracts, supervised works programs, made sure the roads got fixed and the money got spent properly, and the contractors didn't take liberties. Good work. Useful work. The kind of work that keeps the city moving and that nobody notices until it stops happening. I'll tell you something about that work that I've only been able to say since I left it. There's a satisfaction in it that's hard to explain to people who haven't done it. You plan a resurfacing scheme on a road that's been in a state for 3 years, you manage the contractors, you deal with the complaints from residents, you watch the work go in, and then 6 months later you drive down that road and it's smooth and it works and nobody is thinking about it, because roads that work don't make you think about them. That invisibility is the point. That's what you were there for. I drove a lot of roads in Coventry in my last year before I retired and thought, right, I did that one, and that one, and that one. Nobody knows. Doesn't matter. They're there. I retired at 65. Good pension. Not extravagant, but solid. The kind of pension that works if you're not trying to run a 4-bedroom house in Coventry on your own, which is what I was doing after my wife Carol passed. Carol died 4 years before I retired. Cancer, she was 61. We'd been together 34 years. She was from Coventry, same as me, grew up 2 streets away. We'd known each other since we were teenagers. When she went, the house went with her in a sense. Not physically, it was still there. All her things were still there. Her cardigan on the hook by the back door, her reading glasses on the kitchen table, the garden she'd kept for 20 years still needing attention. But the life that had filled the house was gone, and what was left was just me moving through rooms that had been built for 2 people. I kept the house going for 3 years after she died. Habit mainly. You keep doing what you were doing, because stopping feels like admitting something you're not ready to admit. I tidied. I cooked for one. I watched the television in the evenings in the chair I'd always sat in, while Carol sat in hers. I went to the garden on Sundays because she would have wanted it kept right. I remember one Sunday in March, about 18 months after she went. Cold but dry, the kind of March day that promises spring without delivering it. I was in the garden doing what she would have done, cutting back the roses, clearing the beds, and I stopped and looked at the garden and thought, this is Carol's garden. I've been maintaining Carol's garden for 18 months, and when I'm gone it'll go to seed within a year, because nobody here knows what it's supposed to look like. It was her vision. I was just the maintenance. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it because it was clarifying. I understood something that afternoon about the difference between maintaining a life and living one. Then I retired, and the structure of the working week went, and the managing got harder. The days had too much space in them. Good weather, you could feel the time. Bad weather, and Coventry has a considerable amount of bad weather. You rattled around the house and felt the quiet in a specific way that I couldn't fix by turning the television up. Jamie started sending me links. He'd been reading about retirement abroad, and he sent me things about Spain and Portugal and eventually the Philippines. I watched a video about a man in a place called Dumaguete. £70 a week all in, fresh fish every day, warm all year, a seafront where the whole city came out to walk in the evenings. I watched it 3 times. Then I found more videos. Then I spent about 4 weeks watching them most evenings after my tea, and at some point around week 4, I realized I'd stopped watching them as information and started watching them as something I actually wanted. I rang Jamie, told him I was thinking about going to have a look. "Go, Dad," he said. "You've been in that house on your own for long enough. Mum would say the same thing." He was right. She would have. I booked 3 weeks. Worst case, I come home and tell Jamie it wasn't for me. Best case, something else happens. Something else happened. The flight to Cebu. Then a ferry south to an island called Negros Oriental. About 3 hours on the water. The sea a colour I hadn't seen before, somewhere between blue and green and better than either. Then a bus to Dumaguete. When I came out of the ferry terminal, the heat hit me. Not just warm, a different category of air entirely, thick and warm and smelling of things I didn't have names for yet. I stood there with my bag and thought right then, Frank, here we are. Dumaguete is a university town, about 100,000 people, a seafront boulevard with old acacia trees leaning over the water, tricycles everywhere, those motorcycle sidecar things, 30p a ride. They'll take you anywhere in the city. Markets, restaurants, students on bicycles. A mix of young people and families and a handful of expats who've been there long enough that the city knows their faces. I found a guest house for the first week, run by a woman called Ate Linda, who sorted me out in the direct, warm way that Filipino women sort things out. Here's what you need, here's where you go, here's what you pay. Any questions, come and find me. She pointed me toward the market on the first morning. Told me to go early before the heat built. I went at 6:30, and I've been going at 6:30 ever since. That first morning at the market, I want to say something about it because it was the first time the Philippines felt real, rather than like something I was visiting. The Dumaguete market is a proper market, not set up for tourists, set up for the people who live there and who need to eat. Covered stalls, concrete floor, the smell of fresh fish and vegetables and something frying somewhere. Women arriving early with bags. Vendors calling out. A noise and a warmth and a business-like quality that reminded me of nothing in England and that I found, standing there at 6:30 on my first morning, completely and immediately right. Like a place that was doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing. I didn't know what half of it was. I pointed at things and paid what I was asked, and carried home a bag of fruit and vegetables and fish that I then had to work out how to cook, which took most of the morning and produced something that was edible if not exactly what I'd intended. Aunt Linda found this process entertaining and appeared in my kitchen at a certain point and showed me a few things without making me feel stupid about not knowing them. By the end of the first week, I was managing the market and the cooking at a basic level and feeling considerably more capable than I had on the first morning. The flat came in the second week. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a covered porch at the front, on a residential street 3 streets back from the boulevard. A landlord called Ramon who was methodical and fair. We sat down to discuss the terms and he went through everything clearly. The rent, the deposit, what was included, what wasn't, what to do if something broke. Then he asked how long I was thinking. I said I wasn't sure. 6 months to start, he said, See how you get on, extend if it suits. I signed the paper there and then, and I remember sitting back after I'd signed it and thinking, that's it. That's a flat in the Philippines with my name on the lease. That's a commitment, small as it is. That's me saying I'm staying at least 6 months. And it felt not frightening, the opposite of frightening. It felt like something settling into place. £175. £175 a month for a flat in a warm city with a seafront and a market and people who say good morning when you walk past. In Coventry, I was paying £780 for something smaller and considerably greyer. The money. Full picture, because I know you want it. Rent £175. Food I eat at the local restaurants mostly, fresh fish and rice, a proper meal for between £1 and £2, about £85 a month. Utilities about £40. Health insurance £150. Everything else £50. Total £500 a month. My pension is £1,140. I have £640 left every month. £640 left every month, building up in my account for the first time since Carol. Now the plate of rice and egg. This is the thing that started everything, and I want to tell it properly, because it was a Tuesday morning, and I was sitting on my porch reading, and a boy knocked on the gate. 7 years old. Junior. He lived 3 doors down with his grandmother Nang Puring and his family. And he was holding a covered plate, and he said, "This is from Lola for the new neighbour." I took the plate. I said, "Thank you." He ran back down the street. I took the cover off. Rice and a fried egg and some vegetables. Simple food. Sent by a woman I'd never met to a stranger who'd moved in 3 doors down. Because that's what you do here when someone new arrives. You feed them. I sat on the porch and ate the rice and egg, and I thought about Coventry, about the neighbours I'd had for 15 years on my street, whose names I wasn't entirely sure of, about keeping yourself to yourself. And I thought, this is different. This is genuinely different. I took the plate back that afternoon, knocked on Nang Puring's door. She opened it, saw me, smiled, said, "Come in." I went in, she made coffee. We sat in her kitchen and talked for an hour, her in Cebuano and me in English, and both of us managing somehow. 9 grandchildren. Junior is the youngest. She's been on that street for 40 years. Came here as a young woman, raised her children here, buried her husband here, knows every family on the street by name and history, and which of their grandchildren are doing well at school, and which ones need watching. She sent food again the following Tuesday, and the Tuesday after. By the 3rd week it was a regular thing. I'd go round on Tuesday afternoons with something from the market, fruit, something sweet, whatever looked good, and she'd have coffee on and we'd sit in the kitchen. Her daughter Tessie started joining us. Tessie speaks good English and translates when the conversation gets complicated, which it often does, because Nang Puring has opinions about everything and expresses them at length and with considerable energy. I've learned to follow about 60% of it. The other 40% I get from Tessie's expression. Tessie's husband Rolando comes round on Friday evenings. He brings San Miguel, a 4-pack, sometimes a 6-pack, if Coventry City have lost that week, which he follows on his phone, because Tessie told him I supported them and he adopted them out of solidarity, which is either the kindest or the most misguided thing anyone has ever done for me. We watch whatever sport is on, and argue about football in 2 languages, and eat whatever Tessie has cooked, which is always too much and always excellent. Last Friday we watched a boxing match from Manila. I don't follow boxing particularly, but Rolando was invested, and his Investment was contagious, and by the third round I was shouting at the television in English, and Rolando was shouting in Cebuano, and Tessie was, telling us both to be quiet, and Junior was sitting between us on the sofa, looking from one to the other with the delighted expression of a child who has found the adults entertaining for once. Junior figured out early on that I had biscuits in my flat. This information spread to his cousins with the efficiency that information spreads among children who share a street. I now keep a tin specifically for the gate visits. Most mornings before school, Junior appears, sometimes with one cousin, sometimes with 3. Biscuit obtained, they're gone in 30 seconds. One morning Junior came to the gate alone and stood there for a moment without saying anything, and then said, "Lolo Frank, can I see where you live?" I said, "Of course." He came in and walked around the flat with the focused attention of a 7-year-old conducting an inspection, and then stopped in front of the photograph of Carol I keep on the shelf and said, "Who is that?" I said, "That's my wife." He said, "Where is she?" I said, "She died." He looked at the photograph for a moment and then looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, Lolo Frank." Then he took his biscuit and left. I stood there for a while after he'd gone. Lolo Frank. That's what Junior called me first, and it stuck. Then his cousin started. Now it's what the whole street calls me. The children anyway. The adults call me Tito Frank, which means uncle. I am Tito Frank to the adults and Lolo Frank to the children, and I am the Englishman from Coventry who keeps biscuits and who comes round on Tuesday afternoons and who has been taught enough Cebuano by Tessie to say good morning and how much does this cost, and this fish is very fresh. I go to Nang Puring's fish stall at the market on Tuesdays and Fridays. She's been selling fish at that stall for 20 years. She saves me the good tuna when she knows I'm coming. She gives me the honest price. When I arrive at the stall, she calls out something to the other vendors, and there is a general acknowledgement of my presence that I find more welcoming than anything that ever happened to me in a Coventry supermarket. The market itself is one of the best parts of the week, not just for the shopping, for what it is. The Dumaguete market at 6:30 in the morning is the city at its most honest. No performance for visitors, just people doing what they do every day. The vegetable section, where the women arrange their produce with a care that turns a pile of vegetables into something that looks considered. The fish section, where the catch from the night before is laid out on ice, and the smell of it is the smell of the sea, and not the smell of a supermarket fish counter, which are different things. The dry goods section, where you can buy everything from cooking oil to phone credit to a single cigarette if that's what you need. I walk the whole thing most mornings, even when I don't need much. I know the stalls now, and the vendors know me, and the knowing has accumulated over 2 years into something that feels, on a good morning, like being part of somewhere. The conversation group. 3 mornings a week at the university, there's an English conversation group for local students and young professionals who want to practice. A Filipino woman called Dr. Reyes, who runs the English department, asked if I'd be willing to help. I said yes because I had the time and because 31 years of highways meetings had given me a reasonable ability to make myself understood. I go on Monday, Wednesday and Friday mornings, 9 to 11, 8 to 12 students usually. We talk. They practice. I hear about their lives, their families, their ambitions, what they want to do and where they want to go and what they're afraid of. A student called Rico wants to work in civil engineering in the UK. He asked more questions about road maintenance in one morning than anyone asked me in 31 years of doing it. I've been putting together notes for him about the UK civil engineering sector. Small thing, means something to him. A girl called Maylene is 22 and wants to be a nurse in Canada. She's shy in the group, but she stays after sometimes, and we talk one-to-one, and her English is better than she thinks it is. Another student called Bert is 47, works in local government, came to the group because his boss told him to improve his written English. He brings a notebook, he writes things down, he reads them back. He's the most diligent student I've ever taught, and I taught no one before this. The boulevard in the evenings. This is the thing I didn't expect to like as much as I do. The Rizal Boulevard runs along the seafront, and in the evenings from about 5 o'clock, the whole city comes out. Families with pushchairs, students on bicycles, old men on benches, food stalls setting up. The Bohol Strait in front of you, going all the way to the horizon, the last of the light on the water. I walk it most evenings, an hour, sometimes more. I know the stalls now and which ones are good, and the woman who sells the best fresh coconut, and the old man who plays guitar near the fountain every Tuesday and Thursday, and who nods when I pass, because we've been nodding at each other for long enough that the nod means something now. Some evenings I see Nang Puring's cousin Merle, who walks the boulevard with her sister most nights, and who stops to talk when our paths cross. Some evenings I run into Rolando coming off his shift, and we walk a stretch together. Some evenings I'm just on my own with the water and the light, and the sound of the city going about its evening, and I think about Carol and what she would have made of all this, and I'm as certain as I can be about anything that she would have loved every last bit of it. I ring Jamie on Sundays. He asks how it's going. I tell him. He laughs a lot during these calls. He said last month that I sound completely different from how I sounded the year after his mum died. I said I probably am completely different. He said he was glad. I said so was I. I'm Lolo Frank. I'm Tito Frank. I'm the Englishman who keeps biscuits and pays the honest price for the tuna, and who has been taught enough Cebuano to get by, and who sent a plate back with fruit and started something that has turned out to be the best thing about the last 2 years of my life. I came to the Philippines because the numbers worked, and Coventry in February is Coventry in February. I stayed because of a plate of rice and egg on a Tuesday morning from a woman I'd never met. That's the whole of it, really.